Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome back to the show. In this episode, we're going to dive into the difference between experience and knowledge. And one of the fascinating things that we found with the shooting school over years and years and years is, how do you take a new shooter that's never fired a rifle before and bring him to the top of the class, out shooting everybody in the class that has years of experience or years of repeating the same thing? And what was really neat about this year, and a couple of things we want to dive into this podcast about, is the fact that in the last 5 classes, 3 of the Top Gun Hat winners had no experience with a rifle. And I find that to be absolutely amazing to watch them to go from point 0 to out shooting everybody on test day. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I also want to get into the trenches of business a little bit. We talked that we were going to do small episodes of From the Trenches, and so we're going to add one of those in here as well. And then lastly, I want to touch base on the instructing side of it, and one of the reasons why we launched the online long-range shooting school, and some of the things that we're focused on for 2024 with clients, not only just purchasing the custom rifles, but coming through different classes and courses that we offer here. So that'll be a great class. Really excited. Machines are really close to up and running. As you can tell, we're a little tired. It's been a couple long weeks. We're finishing up the last 2 classes of the school on top of that. And then we're full on manufacturing mode, which I'm super excited for. So this ought to be a great podcast. Really looking forward to it. So without further ado, here we go. Before we get started, I do want to say a quick thank you to TriggerTech. TriggerTech is the maker of fine rifle triggers. They're made from our great Canadian friends in the north. We put them here and recommend them in all of our custom rifles. And for the simple reason is that they're safe, they're easy to install, and easy to adjust. So if you want to upgrade your rifle and your game and you want to do it with your trigger, we really recommend stopping over and looking at all the great options offered by TriggerTech, and you can visit them at triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com today. We'd also like to thank Krieger Barrels, maker of fine cut rifle barrels from the great state of Wisconsin. They are a family-owned and operated business with a new program called Krieger Direct, where you can log on, purchase your barrel, and have it in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you want the best and you need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. That's Krieger Direct or KriegerBarrels.com today. So one of the things that we have learned over the years here as Wolf Precision, and I say we because it's always a collection of different instructors, different people helping through all the different courses. Of course, Lori, our office manager, if you call and speak with her, Todd, and we had Richard. One of the things that always is a difficult conversation to have internally and externally is, do I, as the owner of Wolf Precision or the president of the company, do I step away and turn the shooting school over to an instructor, someone that we could hire and train to fill my role? Because I really am needed here at the business a lot. There is 2 different hats to wear, and these conversations happen every year. It hasn't happened yet this year, but I'm absolutely certain it is coming, right? So one of the things that when we have these conversations, and it's really hard to explain even internally, is the fact that when you're teaching and you're trying to share with people the art of what we do, there's several different layers of this. It's not just a teaching class. It's not just an instructional course, but there's also a safety aspect of it in which we have to be not only very mindful of the instructional part of it and teaching and all the things that we do that's just a beautiful art of getting somebody hooked into and passionate about long-range shooting. But then we also have the responsibility of the safety of it, and that can be just as exhausting. And there is a mental level you have to be at for the 8 to 10 hours that the students are with you every day, that I liken it to be studying for the world's hardest exam and only learning the subject for 10 hours prior to the test being given the next morning. That level that you have to be at mentally and physically, you're being held at such a high state of attentiveness is the best way I can put it. You're at this 95, 98, 100% level, and you're being held there for like 8 to 10 hours. It is exhausting, and it is an art. It is a skill. You have to be very mindful of it. You have to be reminding yourself that, okay, step it up a notch. Keep both hats on. You've got to keep both hats on. You've got to be attentive. You've got to be assertive. You've got to watch the students. You've got to teach, but you also have to make sure that everybody's being safe. And that dual role is a problem right out of the gate, because a lot of times with newer instructors, this is a very exciting thing to do. It's also a very social thing. You're meeting people for the first time from all over the world, from different walks of life that share the passion that you have, that love and want to learn everything that you can give them, right? They're just a million questions, and they're just waiting to get the answer. They're on the edge of their seat half the time, right? And then there's also a lot of fun. I mean, the backgrounds from all the different, people that have come through the school and those that have attended, where they're from, what they do, all of these exciting things that they've done through their lives. And it's fascinating, right? It's really, a blessing to sit in the same room with people you would never meet in any other way and find that their lives are so fascinating and interesting and all the things that they've done. And you got a chance to spend a couple of days with them, teaching and sharing what you love to do on top of that. So you have this part that is a social event. That in itself creates a problem with newer instructors, because the excitement level of that, and you want to be part of that, right? And then the teaching part of it, and here's what separates, I think, our school from any other class in the country really, is that we can teach the subject, right? Anyone can teach a subject. If they learn the core fundamentals, you could probably reteach anything from a book 1,000,000 times. And although the knowledge that you learn through helping and instructing isn't from the book, it's from watching and learning from when things aren't going well, or when you're trying to correct and help a student get that last bit of accuracy out of them. It's the things that they're doing wrong that not every student does all the time, that you get an opportunity to share with an instructor that for the first time they're seeing this, that they've never seen this before. They had no idea it existed, and then they get to see the correction of it. And that comes from experience on the firing line. And I have to say that not only did the first 10 years of teaching in the school help me as a shooter, the first 2 or 3 years were incredible, because I got to see some of the craziest things that people do when they're shooting. And it was an aha moment to remind myself that, I'm watching them, but I can't watch myself. All these things that they do wrong, I'm sure I've done. I'm absolutely certain I've done. And it really comes to light when you get a chance to put eyes on people that are shooting. And you don't get to see everything in every class. And so some of these things you might only see once or twice a year. And so what I think separates us from every other long-range shooting school in the country is, not only are we one of the oldest, and maybe someone can change their dates and say that they launched their classes before ours, and that's absolutely fine. I believe our first classes were open to the public. We did one in the fall of 2008. I did do private stuff before that, trying to help guys, learn some things about getting on some teams. And of course, I shot competitively before that as well. But that said, though, between then and now, we're going into 17 to 18 years, and I still learn stuff. Even here at the school, I tell students all the time that anytime I get to go to the range, I'm not judging, I'm not correcting, but I'm watching all the time. I'm not just, it's a social thing for sure, but I'm watching shooters because I'm fascinated with the art of what we do. I'm watching how they're pulling their trigger. I'm watching how the rifle's reacting. And maybe it's just embedded in me. Maybe it's just this deep DNA thing that just draws me to this. But I learn something every time I go somewhere because I'm watching and I'm trying to study the art and craft of it. I guess it would be like a musician watching another guitar player or watching another musician playing the drums and studying their techniques and seeing, hey, that's a little bit different on how they're holding that stick. That is neat. Or watching the things that they're doing wrong and saying, well, I want to make sure I don't do that, So this conversation always goes every year, and it's coming. I promise that the conversation will be had at a meeting here within the next 8 weeks, saying we need you to back away from the shooting school a little bit and be here during the shooting season, because we do hold the classes. I think end of April is usually the earliest that we hold, and then usually we finish up about the middle of October. And in that time frame, we have a lot of classes. We're maintaining the rifles for the school. We're maintaining the range. We're reloading for the school rifles, and there's a lot going on. But what I think they fail to understand, and what I'm trying to convey over to you, is that at that level, it would take me someone sitting beside me 24/7 at every class and not teaching, but just watching. And it would probably take 5 years for them to see half of the things that can go wrong or that shooters do wrong, and then see the corrective course of it. And I think for me, and that's the problem, is that we could send somebody to the range and have them know the subject and teach the subject, but for that one student that's not doing so well, it's just not working. Well, what can happen is the instructor can get frustrated, or he just writes them off as a crappy shooter, or it just deteriorates. It only gets worse because nobody knows what's going on. When someone who's seen that before can look at the student and start looking at their setup and start looking how they're shooting, and all of a sudden something sticks out, you're like, oh, there it is. And you make a small correction, and within a shot or two, the shooter's back in the game again. And I could talk about this all day. How fast you correct somebody. Like a lot of times, we'll talk about this for just a couple more minutes. A lot of times, it's not just making a correction, but it's letting them repeat what they're doing, just to let it settle out. Like, for example, if somebody cranks a shot and it's not on target, or it's not a good shot, right? Or something's going on goofy at 100 yards, which happens sometimes, I won't change anything. They have a shot go way off, or just their zero has changed dramatically. I'll make them shoot 2 or 3 more rounds in the same exact position, in the same exact setup, monitoring them and the target. And the reason being is, if I do that, then there's a chance of me just fixing everything and hoping that what I throw at them fix the problem, to identifying the problem. And you have to have those couple shots to give you a chance to actually see what the real problem was, and not just throw every correction that in the book. And here's another problem with a lot of instructors that are new, is they have all of this knowledge, and right away they stand a student up and they overwhelm them with all these corrections that they have to do. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to cover the air with a blanket, or the mistakes with a giant blanket of corrections, hoping that one of the things that they're covering is the problem, and they just don't know what that problem is. And so that's the other thing, is that you can run, and I've seen this even with guest instructors as they're working with students, and I'll listen and I'll watch and I'll let them run the gauntlet a little bit as far as like them honing their skills, watching the students and trying to help them make corrections. But there's many times I have to step over and say, hold on a second here, let's take a look. And then there it is, and we correct it. That instructor wouldn't have found that, and that shooter would have kept deteriorating until the point where they would have been frustrated, or they would have got frustrated with the instructor. So I'm really blessed that I get to do this for a living. We had a customer ask earlier, like, hey, what are you going to do when you retire? And I sort of laughed and had to think about it for a minute. And I was like, well, I'll probably build rifles and teach a long-range shooting school. And, I'm blessed. I work really hard. Of course, we put lots of hours in. It's just like anything else. I'd never complain. I love what I do. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But what we've decided to do for 2024 is that for next year, we're going to limit our classes to 13. We're only going to have 5 students in a class. That means we're going to only allow 65 students to enroll in our shooting school for the shooting season. And that will free me up to take care of my responsibilities here, but still keep me on the line as we keep working with instructors and getting them to the point where they can take customers with their new rifles to the range and do the introductory and go over all the core stuff that they need to do to really get the customer started off on the right foot, but not a master class per se. So if you would like to attend one of our long-range shooting schools, I will be here. I will be part of the class, of course. I teach every class in the morning, and then we'll go to the range, but we are going to limit them to 13. You can sign up now. You can go over to Wolf Precisions, and you can go on our website, and we are limited to 5 students per class, and so our classes are very small, and that way we can teach you a lot more by basically getting you 4 or 5 days of instruction over the course of 3 days. But then you will have me there with you on the firing line, teaching the subjects and watching and helping, and I think that's where it is. And so when you get into trying to work with what we do and going back and circling back to these students that had come through, which fascinated me, by the way, this has been in my head all week, and we've been working on the machine, so I haven't been able to really do a podcast here for a week or two, but it's been in my head all week that we had, of the last 5 classes, 3 of them, the Top Gun hat went out to the shooter with no experience. So let me dive into this for a minute. One of the shooters came reluctantly. He came because his family was coming, but shooting wasn't his thing at all. He was like, I'm just here to have fun. And, my dad and my brother are the shooters. I don't have much experience with this at all. I'm just here to, learn and spend time with them. He took the hat. He outshot them all on the 3rd day, which was absolutely amazing, right? And then we had a young girl, 14 or 15 years old, hardly no experience whatsoever. I mean, she shoots, obviously, but she was never a trained competitor. She's 14 or 15. And at the end of the class, she took the Top Gun hat. And in the class we just ended, we had a gentleman in the class here, professional for sure, no experience in shooting, none. I mean, it was just something he wanted to learn. And he chose to come here, which we really appreciated. But, I mean, he had no experience. And he took the hat on the 3rd day, Top Gun hat, best shooter in the class, high score. He was very slow. He was very methodical. He followed the instructions. But it's not just that. So one of the secrets to the class is just that we don't teach a subject. We have the ability to teach from experience. And having that experience of working with all the different shooters and all the different things and little things that each individual shooter can do wrong, the common errors that they introduce into it just really allows us to take a shooter and just sort of micro mold them, give them the little things. It's all these little things collectively that make the difference. And once you draw that out of them and once they understand the process and, hey, we're taking on the role of 2 people here. We are both the spotter and the shooter, where the person has to make the wind call. We have to calculate the dope. We have to keep an eye on our fundamentals, and we still have to put the bullet down range, right? And it's just amazing to watch. So I'm really blessed. I think that over the years, we're really fine-tuning our skills and learning how different students approach the rifle and how to work with different students and all of their different personalities. But I think the success of the school isn't the fact that, we're the only ones teaching the subject or that knows the subject. I think it's just the fact that we've been on the line for nearly 2 decades now teaching and learning and watching all the little things that can go wrong with each individual student, how to correct and micromanage these things, and how to share all the little details that make all the difference when it comes to putting rounds downrange and hitting what you're going after, and just basically enjoying yourself at the firing line. So for 2024, if you'd like to join us, we do have our early bird special up. If you sign up for one of our schools before December 31st this year, you do get $50 off the class, and our way of saying thank you. And again, the classes are limited. I am going to run 13 classes next year, and that is the total. And we are going to have 5 students in a class. So if you'd like to be one of the 65 to join us here for 2024, we'd love to have you. Registration is open online today. Now, a little bit of From the Trenches news, talking a little bit about business. This is, of course, the Custom Rifle Building business. And, we do operate a business here as well. And it's funny that as a growing business and a growing and student, becoming an entrepreneur, I guess, and hoping to keep continuing and growing our business after 17 years of being in it. One of the things that I would like to share with the business owners out there is just not losing faith, making sure that you keep your head down and focus on the important things. I think what I've learned over the last couple of years, and especially the last 12 months, so within the last 12 months, every part of our business got turned upside down. So 12 months ago, almost to this day, we were planning on maybe buying a sailboat. And what are we going to do with all the spare time we have? I mean, we had a really efficient and effective running business, and it took us 17 years to get there. And my wife is our office manager, of course, and she was like, "Well, I'm sort of bored sometimes. I'm not sure what, we're busy, but we're really good at what we do." And needless to say, in less than 3 months, every part of our business got flipped upside down. We had to relocate our entire facility. We had to purchase a facility. It fast-tracked us 2 years of putting machines in, which we were planning on doing in about 2025, 2026. And so in the combination of moving our facility, which was a forced move, a bank had purchased our facility and gave 39 businesses 90 days to move. So And this was a week before Christmas. So we moved our business. At that point, we decided, well, if we're going to do that, we might as well just go ahead and let's look at the business for our long-term goals as to bring the machines in and getting things set up to make some of the parts and pieces that we use to help with, we're making a lot of barrels and help take some of the overflow off of that machine and not overwhelm them all the time and bring some of the machining in-house to make it easier for everybody, right? And then they decided they were going to take coal off of our range. And by the way, cannot ever say that the people that we held our shooting school at for 17 years, the landowners, have just been awesome to work with. They got an offer for millions of dollars to take coal off of where the shooting range was setting. And so we actually moved the shooting range and we redid and moved the building. We resetting up the course. So point of sale, a lot of the people in the firearms industry struggle with a lot of the banking. So for example, there is a lot of credit card processing companies that will not do business with the firearms industry. It's just a fact. They won't allow you to process cards. PayPal, Square, QuickBooks have gone woke and said that, hey, yeah, maybe it's not our place, but we can help crush things we don't believe in and we think other people think we should crush. And let's go ahead and turn off the banking industry access. If we can't process money, we can't stay in business, right? And so we had found our long-term solution with that. We're changing all of our point of sale over stuff to Orchid and new website. So what was funny was we were sitting here talking last night. We just moved our office over, a little bit bigger office, which I'm excited. It looks pretty good and a little bit more room for CAD and CAM and all the books and things that are in my room. But what was funny is we were talking last night and it was like, wow, we went from, really, I don't want to say complacent. We had a plan, but all that got flipped right on its head almost instantly. And every part of our business in 1 year had to be changed. And, just changing our shooting range in 1 year would have been a big to-do. Just having to move our building in 1 year would have been a really big deal. Having to move our processing on how we accept payments, having to redo our website, a whole new launch of a website, which will be coming soon. But to have to do that all in 1 year, and most of it a forced reset. So 90% of the things that we are doing wasn't stuff that we had a choice. We either had to accomplish these goals to stay in business and to move our business forward, or risk, being out of business, which, most businesses do. So from the trenches, my wife even at one point was getting a little bit worried. We were working about 85 hours a week. And you do get tired, you get worn down. So I will tell you that I have more respect for people now that have been in business for 20 or 30 years than I ever have. When I was younger, I thought there's no way I could work harder. And when I was in my 30s, I thought there's no way I could put more hours in. When I was in my 40s, I thought there's no way I can stick another thing in my brain. Now I'm in my 50s, I'm taking more M-Code and G-Code classes. I'm taking CAD and CAM classes. I'm taking, just these machines are super advanced. And, a lot of the things in the setup processes as far as just getting the machines up and running. It's the tooling. Everything's changed in our industry. So now it's like you're sitting back and you're thinking, how is this humanly possible? And I'll tell you how it's possible. You have to have faith. You got to believe. You've got to get up in the morning and put your shoes on. You've got to get that cup of coffee in your hand. You got to put your head down and you've got to go. And regardless of how tired you are, regardless of how exhausted you are, regardless of all the obstacles that are going to come to you that day, you have to have the drive to push through. You have to stand back up. That's the biggest thing. You're going to get knocked down in life. You're going to get knocked down a million times. You got to stand back up. It's not the person that loses that gets knocked down. It's the person who can't stand up again. I liken it to a story when I was younger. I could tell you a gazillion stories, but there was a very hard point in my life where I took a pretty good beating and I stood back up. I wasn't afraid. I knew that I could be hurt. I knew that I could be hurt again. I knew that I could be knocked down again. But the respect of standing back up on your feet, ready to go again, that's that drive. You have to do it. So from the trenches, I will tell you that it's easy for people to write books. And I love listening to books, and I love listening to all these audiobooks where the people are hoorah, and I love when these professors are telling us about 55,000 different companies that they've studied and they know the secrets, right? You might know the secrets that are written, right? But you do not know what it's like to put 85 hours a week in, be flat on your back, exhausted, and you have to stand up again. You do not know what that's like. And people depending on you, that you have to do this work and that only you can do it. And you have to do it right. You have to do it well. You have to do it great. And you have to do it with a smile. And so kudos to all of you business owners out there. I say, make sure you have a plan. Make sure you're working towards a goal. Just don't let your business run you into the ground without an end in sight, without something that you're working for or a mark that you're trying to hit. Set those goals for sure, or else you're working for working's sake. But to all of you business owners out there, I don't think you get half the respect you deserve. And for those that make it, I think here's the part that breaks my heart the most is, for those that have made it, the lucky few that were able to see it through to the end and actually reap some rewards for the 90 plus hours a week that they worked exhausted while paying themselves, little to nothing to keep reinvesting in our business, So when we were younger, for my first several years in business, I paid myself next to nothing. I mean, every dollar we made, we bootstrapped this business. Every dollar we made went back into the business. And I did that for years. And so I think there's a lot of small business owners and stuff that have done this, and then all of a sudden they want to be villainized when they sell their business and they become a quote unquote millionaire. What is a millionaire? Well, you put $3 million in the bank. Yeah, that sounds like a ton of money. And to someone who wants to go out and blow it, a great time for 2 years. But that's a six-figure retirement. That's $90,000 a year to retire. And, I think when we villainize those people, now we want to take portions of that. They've already given everything. They've given, most of them, some of them have given their lives. They've worked themselves to the point to where they just die. That's just how it is. You push yourself to the limit. You have a heart attack, you're not taking care of yourself because you're not getting to the gym because you're working so many hours. You're eating terrible because it's easier to order out than go home and try to cook for half an hour. But for those that make it and they finally get a small reward, then not only is our government beating them up and villainizing them like the millionaire next door. You got to read that book. But most millionaires aren't millionaires instantly. It's something that they've accumulated over time, and it's their net worth. And I think the sad part is when they get there, people sort of give them a side eye, and they don't realize how much sacrifice, how much time they've taken away from every other thing in life that other people enjoy as pleasures. We've sacrificed those pleasures to grow something that might outlive us, outstrive us. Then maybe the second and third generation can take over and grow and continue to grow. We're trying to plant the seed to create a mighty oak, and it takes a long time, and it is a lot of hard work. So to all you business owners out there that are getting up and bootstrapping it every morning, to all you hard workers out there that are actually doing the work that needs to be done, kudos to you for getting up. And I think anyone sitting on the sidelines that think that there's an entitlement to this, they should be giving you thanks in the morning and saying, thank you for going and doing all that you do. Thank you for getting up every day and making this possible for those that are trying to be pulled up to. So I do want to say thank you real quick to one more sponsor. MDT is a proud sponsor of the show. We really appreciate the fact that they help us out here. They make lots of different great chassis. We had the J. Allen in the last class, which is incredible to shoot. A lot of clients find it to be extremely comfortable. I'm really glad that they released it. I have one. We have our stock wall here in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. If you'd like to come in and check out all the different stocks and chassis, they're here. It's no charge. You can come in, visit us anytime. We're open Monday through Thursday. Also, we'd like to say thank you to MDT for being with us for so long. They've actually helped donate some products that we've given away here on the podcast. They've actually helped us since the beginning of this podcast, I think within the first year. So if you want to upgrade your rifle, a great way to do it, if it is factory, is to upgrade the stock. Getting something that's going to fit correctly, getting something that's going to have adjustable and cheek piece. And you can do that by stopping over to MDT's website. They have a great selection of stocks for a lot of different makes and models. So if you want to learn more about MDT, you can stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com. Also, if you enjoy the podcast and like to support the show, we have our Wolf Pack. You can stop over to Patreon or click in the link down below. And for $3 a month, join the podcast. We certainly appreciate that. If you know anybody that's into shooting and you'd like to share the podcast, we appreciate that as well. It helps us a lot with our rankings. So don't forget the online long-range shooting school. We are into season 3. We have over 16 hours of content. There'll be a new video coming up next week. We're hoping to have the entire series up and running and then getting into all the bonus content of how we build the rifles, how we put our scopes on, rifle maintenance, cleaning, all these things will be bonus content that's going to go up there on as well. And then that'll probably spill into next year. But if you'd like to join us at our shooting school, but you can't come here physically, the online long-range shooting school, I'm very proud of it. I have worked diligently for over a year for all the content that's on there. It is our in-person shooting school, but the chance to go into more detail into some of the subjects because we're not forced into a very strict timeline here in the in-person class. So we're just able to cover a lot of more detail in the content. You can learn more about that at Patreon. You can just look for Wolf Precision, or you can go over to our website. It's wolfprecision.net and just look for our online long-range shooting school. It's a monthly subscription. You can sign up or sign out at any time. You want to come back and do a refresh, you can do that and sign back out when you're completed. So you can stop over to wolfprecision.net or Patreon and look for Wolf Precision. We certainly appreciate it. It is our complete long-range shooting school that you can attend from the comfort and convenience of your own home. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. We really appreciate it. Next week's podcast, we're going to continue on our custom rifle building series. We're going to start talking about stocks and chassis. I know we've talked about these in the past. You can go back and listen to some of our older podcasts. But there are some things that we need to talk about. If you're going to get the most from the rifle, it causes a lot of heartache. There's little details that come into this. And there are ways to correct and to get the most from the actual stock and chassis itself, and things you have to keep an eye on that you can actually either harm your rifle or inadvertently cause some issues that's going to play out later on down the line. So it ought to be a great podcast next week. Looking forward to getting the content out. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us here on the show. We really appreciate it. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.